Hello everyone. Before we start today's video, if you could all do me a solid and lightly tap the like button, perhaps share the video about and leave a comment. If you are not subscribed, subscribe as well. It would greatly help this channel. Thank you very much. Well, isn't this just fantastic? Captain's Log, Subdates 221019.7. I'm currently having a meeting with my senior staff and have started laying the foundations for our inevitable crusade to conquer Subfleet and replace it with a master, an ocean master. Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. Today I'd like to look at an article written on The Guardian by writer Stuart Heritage, titled, "Now It's Over, Let's Come Out and Say It. The Rings of Power Was a Stinker." The world's most expensive show, which looked like an episode of Hollyoaks, which is a B-list version of a soap opera, only with woeful acting, was so inept that every episode left you sniggering. I managed in total 3 episodes, but I really could not stand any more of it. It was so awkward, so clunky. Now, I mentioned the writer of the article in particular because I went to look up other things they've written, and it surprised me. We're talking about The Guardian here. An example would include, "We are all losers in the woke v racist Little Mermaid culture war. The boring spat over the Disney trailer makes idiots of us all. Whether Ariel is black or white, it is clearly a film that should rightfully be ignored, then forgotten forever." I can't be the only person who sees these on The Guardian's own site and thinks, how have you gotten away with it? But there's more. Peter Jackson wants to wipe his mind of Lord of the Rings. He should snap out of it. After 6 blockbuster Tolkien movies, Jackson wants Darren Brown, a hypnotist kind of magician type person, to wipe his memory of Middle-earth. It's a boneheaded quest. And in before someone thinks that perhaps Stuart Heritage is someone that might, in any way, just be a hater of Lord of the Rings, he co-wrote an article with Kate Abbott going through the must-see TV shows of autumn 2022, and The Rings of Power was on the list, and it was the first one, being quoted as saying, after a few years on the ropes, Amazon is roaring back into the TV game by making the loudest noise imaginable. The Rings of Power is not only set in one of the most beloved literary worlds in all of history, J.R.R. Tolkien's Middle-earth, but it is reportedly also the most expensive television program ever made. It had better be good for everyone's sake. That was written on the 21st of August 2022, and it is what we like to call foreshadowing, because if you have suffered through this show, you will know that it was obvious who Sauron was from the start. Please, don't try and say you couldn't see it. You're not stupid. The chemistry between the acting was horrendous. There were some good signs. Yes, there were, but they were few and far between. It is believed with the second season they're going to focus more on the war itself, and that's a good sign if they can actually get anything written properly that will, let's say, pay respect to the source material they use and yet can't use because of weird licensing. For this video, I want to focus on the first article I mentioned, and the reason why is because Stuart has very good points. When The Lord of the Rings of Power debuted at the same time as The House of the Dragon, Game of Thrones, much noise was made about which show attracted more eyeballs. According to Nielsen, it was a conclusive victory for Tolkien, with The Rings of Power viewers watching the first 2 episodes for 1.25 billion minutes compared to The House of the Dragon's 741 million. House of the Dragon has had raving reviews consistently. The memes have been off the charts. Matt Smith, I'll be honest, he has found his absolute magnum opus. As an actor, he has finally hit his stride and done something where he's not being universally panned for it. Not necessarily his performance, by the way, just what he's a part of. And he has been involved in some good things over the years, yes, but there's a lot of shit as well. Just admit it, don't stan him, shut the fuck up. House of the Dragon has been consistently good though, it really has. The same cannot be said for Rings of Power, because they had to brag about the price all the time, constantly bragging about how expensive it was to make. I'll be honest, it doesn't matter how expensive something is, the quality needs to speak for itself. If the quality doesn't speak for itself, what have you actually done? Oh, that's right. You've torn up so much history and so much canon to make your own story where there are more questions than answers, and all the questions seem to center around the one question that matters. Why does what you make look like really bad lappers?
Tell me how the grass tastes, little man! Really? No feeling is getting there!
That, as you can clearly tell, is a deleted scene from the show. But over the weeks, something strange has happened. House of the Dragon has sucked up all the spotlight. It has attracted tweets, theories, memes, discussions, all on a rolling boil since the first episode. Meanwhile, if the Rings of Power has been seen anywhere, it was only in places paid for by Amazon. There are billboards and adverts and special Amazon packing tape adorned with the show's logo. But in terms of spontaneous organic excitement, it has been a wilderness. That's because, it turns out, you really can't force feed everything down an audience's throat. Also, people forget most of the time that Amazon have a streaming service. They really do. But also, you force-fed it. Akin to that of the Ghostbusters reboot, akin to that of the all-female versions of certain franchises that all invariably tanked. Or most of the very, trashy reboots. RoboCop is a fantastic example. Why? Well, now that the first season is finally over, there is one clear answer. The Rings of Power isn't very good. It quite often isn't anywhere near good. There are moments in almost every episode where I have found myself sniggering into my sleeve at how inept it is. And all these misgivings were massively underlined by the finale. The final episode promised to answer the question at the heart of the first season, who is Sauron? Throughout the last few weeks, the show had been tying itself to all kinds of knots to get us to care about this, wheeling out a truckload of mustache-twirling figures with Sauron potential. Was it the evil orc anyone called Father? The man who fell from the sky? Was it the evil woman who looked like Curtin from the... I don't know what that is. Or was it the man who spent the entire season hanging out with Galadriel and was obviously Sauron all along? Who knew?
You will die because of me!
There's no point telling you the identity of Sauron. If you watched, you know who it is. If you didn't watch, you don't care. And if you like collecting decontextualized spoilers like strange little presents, then you have googled Rings of Power who is Sauron 1 second after the episode finished airing, and had been assailed by thousands of online publications screaming out his identity for clicks. My point is, good television cannot function on who shot Phil Mitchell cliffhangers alone. Yes, that might be the destination, but the journey also has to be enjoyable as well. And in terms of both plot and presentation, the Rings of Power simply hasn't cut the mustard. The biggest issue, the one that caused the bulk of the sniggering, was the acting. This is a show with a sprawling cast blasted across a number of locations, and there is no consistency whatsoever. People don't seem to have been told what sort of show they are acting in, and it is quite frankly bizarre. You can add to that, because it felt like a version of Game of Thrones. Many different stories being told at once, all intertwined in a manner. The thing is, Rings of Power doesn't work in this format. It really doesn't. Game of Thrones did because look at what he wrote. George All the R's Martin wrote a very good story, and I'm still maintaining the best part of the entire show was the Starbucks mug in Season 8. The point is you cannot emulate or rip off something else to try and make it your own as if it is something new, but in doing so, show that your own cast don't know where your story is going. They don't understand the story. It gives off the impression they are simply told to act a certain way without even realizing the grander scope of the story you are trying to tell, which in turn means they don't know what they're doing, and they're not as invested either, which in turn means you are throwing money at something knowing it is not going to succeed. At its best, largely thanks to the thrilling, urgent actress who clearly felt the sting of every word she spoke, The Rings of Power came off as a pretty good prestige drama. But at its worst, there was some Toast of London level acting on display, some Sherry Breath regional theatre matinee performances stinking up the place. I don't want to single out any individual actors, partly because it would be cruel, but mainly because I suspect it's the fault of the directors rather than the actors. Even in Friday's episode, some of the smaller parts appear to have beamed in directly from an unaired 1983 episode of Doctor Who. For context, in 1983, the show had bugger all budget and looked like absolute trash. A good director with an overview of the entire series would have steered moments like this into safer territory. It is the fault and responsibility of everyone involved. but actually you latch on to the right point later on. I'm going to skip over the part about the music because I actually agree with the statement of it being someone having slept on the fantasy preset of a keyboard. It's the part, the last paragraph in fact, where you write, "A while ago someone on the financial side of the television industry reminded me that Amazon is not a television company. It is a mail order business that dabbles in TV to boost its credibility. The Rings of Power seems to be a perfect case in point, as if Amazon dumped $1 billion into it for the headlines, then ignored a lot of the details. The frustrating thing is that there is clearly so much potential here. I just don't know if I have it in me to watch anymore to see if it is ever realized." It does come across as a pet project by somebody who just thinks, if I throw money at it, it will do well. It's called the Roman Abramovich way, when he bought Chelsea and just threw money at it until he eventually got the Champions League. I think he got it twice. But when he first got it, it took many attempts. Trophies were bought with that money. Other clubs did the same thing in the future. I find it quite tragic that a show like this genuinely had the potential, and I was just as excited as everyone else. Even when the trailers triggered the crap out of me, I still wanted to give it a fair chance. To then see it did not work. It really didn't. Because there were so many discrepancies, there was so much inconsistency in the performance. And that is the fault of everyone involved. Even if the actress who led as Galadriel put on some great performances, there are other parts of her performance that weren't great. But that's fine. Season 1's over, only up from here, right? Let's be optimistic, shall we? I did that for Doctor Who. That didn't end very well for me.